three main cycles of the system. It is the water cycle, the carbon cycle, and the nitrogen cycle. These three cycles resupply the ecosystem with nutrients needed to support life and maintain environmental sustainability. And when in harmony, are in change of removing waste products. There are four cycles of carbon. It is evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. First is evaporation. Evaporation is the sun heats and evaporates the water in river, lakes, and ocean. Second is condensation. Condensation is the water vapor goes down and condense, forming clouds. Next is precipitation. Precipitation is the water falls from the sky in the form of rain, and the last one is collection. Collection is the oceans and lakes collects water that has fallen. Water evaporates into the sky again, and the cycle continues. Carbon cycle is the water supply was finite, whereas 3% water on Earth is fresh water and only 1% acceptable drinking water. Most ecosystems are depend on a healthy water supply. That's all from me. Next, I will pass to Nurmashita to explain about the next cycle.
So next, I will present about the carbon cycle. So carbon is the most common element in living things, and it's the backbone for a lot of essential molecules. So it's incredibly important. This cycle is also the only one in which human plays a very large role, and it's separate from the role of other animals. So it also helps to keep Earth's temperature at a stable temperature. So the form of carbon exchange we're most familiar with is carbon dioxide that released from respiration and photosynthesis of plants and animals. So both animals and plants breathe out the carbon dioxide when they perform cellular respiration, and then plants will breathe back in the carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, and then they fix it this carbon, which means they take the carbon dioxide, the gas, and turn it into a solid. So they turn it into glucose, and the amount of carbon dioxide that's breathed out by these plants and animals is approximately equal to the amount of carbon dioxide that breathed in by plants. So next, let's talk about the first part of carbon cycle. Now, a lot of carbon also come from the composition of dead organisms and waste products. If you remember, a lot of biological molecules have a heavy carbon content, so when plants die or animals die or produce waste, the carbon content and their biological molecules are broken down and deposited in the soil. So next, over 10,000 of years, this carbon content then turns into fossil fuels. So originally, without help of humans, decomposers completed the cycle by eating decomposed bodies and performing cellular respiration, and that will release the carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere to be used again. But with the introduction of burning fossil fuels, the carbon will be drawn out of the soil reservoir, burned and released as carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So the burning of the fossil fuels is taking carbon from one reservoir and jumping into another reservoir. Another problem is the fact fossil fuels are generally a pretty stable reservoir of carbon. So carbon stays in the soil as fossil fuels for a really long time. Like I said, it takes about 10,000 years to create these fossil fuels, but it only takes a couple of hundred years to burn these fossil fuels and release them into the environment. So clearly there's a natural rhythm of the carbon cycle that's being seriously disrupted. So now that we have completed the cycle, one last thing that's good to remember, that carbon cycle are different reservoirs. So one will talk about the fossil fuels, another reservoir is the sediment in fossil fuels, another reservoir is the sediment in the rocks, and the third reservoir is ocean for carbon, and another reservoir will talk about the atmosphere, and the final reservoir is the plants and animals, and this complete the carbon cycle.
Next, I will be explaining on how does nitrogen cycle works and how does it contribute to environmental sustainability. The nitrogen cycle describes how nitrogen moves through the biosphere and atmosphere. Nitrogen cycle have several stages, which is nitrogen fixation, nitrification, denitrification, and ammonification. During nitrogen fixation, certain prokaryotes convert nitrogen gas to a form that can be used by other organisms, which is ammonia or NH3. This process can also occur due to human activities. Next, during nitrification, NH3 is converted to nitrite by microbes, which is known as ammonia oxidizers. This nitrate is then converted to nitrate by nitrate oxidizing bacteria. This process requires oxygen to occur, or known as aerobic condition. Then during denitrification, nitrate is converted to nitrogen gas by prokaryotes that is typically in soil and sediment. This process does not require oxygen, or known as anaerobic condition. And lastly, during ammonification, where an organism dies or defecates, decomposer will return inorganic nitrogen back to the environment in the form of ammonia. So how does nitrogen cycle contribute to the environmental sustainability? Firstly, nitrogen is key to life. This is because nitrogen is a key element in the nucleic acid, which is DNA and RNA. Both of these are the most important of all biological molecules and crucial for all living things because it carries the genetic information. Secondly, nitrogen can help to reduce pollution that may be caused from adding too much fertilizer to soil. Farmers mainly use fertilizer containing nitrogen to crops to increase crop growth. So without nitrogen, amino acid cannot be produced by plants. Hence, without enough nitrogen, plant growth is affected negatively. So as a conclusion, all of these ecosystem cycle, which is water cycle, carbon cycle, and nitrogen cycle, are essential in an ecosystem because it provides all the necessary requirements and responsibility in order to maintain environmental sustainability. Other than that, it also conserves natural resources and protects the global ecosystem for the health of humans and animals from now on and in the upcoming future. So that is all from us. Thank you.